Rio de Janeiro with a big man.
A warm welcome to you. This is Rio de Janeiro, and my name is Abid Imam. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a big thanks to you for listening and following the show. I really do my best to produce episodes as regularly as possible, and sometimes the inspiration just happens to be serendipitous for a well-suited guest. And that's just who we have for this episode. My managers, Dan, Ryan and I were recently invited to a Olympic Games Tokyo local breakfast run by Olympics Unleashed. And an athlete who presented her story at this event was Natalie Burton, a Australian professional basketballer who competed at the Rio 2016 Olympics. She's had a career that's rich with experiences and learnings. She's wonderful at articulating her perspectives. So I invited her for a conversation, and it was a big thank you to Amy Sarandopoulos from the Australian Olympic Committee for helping make this happen. We'll get into it. I wanted to say a big thanks for supporting Rio de Janeiro. Let's jump into it. Natalie, thank you so much for joining me on Rio de Janeiro. And just wanted to run past how we actually met each other. Serendipitous, which is a great word, but about a month ago in the Southwest in Bunbury, you were delivering a presentation for Olympics Unleashed. And as an Olympian yourself, it was amazing. So tell us about this program before we get into it.
Yeah, Olympics Unleashed is actually all organised through the Australian Olympic Committee, and it is a pilot program in WA, but something that's been run over in the other states for a while now, but still pretty different to what they're doing over in the other states. So the aim of it is essentially getting people, athletes, not necessarily Olympians, so there's also emerging Olympians, just getting athletes out into schools in all areas of WA, metro and regional, to share our story with the hopes of those kids learning from it and applying it to their own lives, with the broader understanding that it is not just about sports. So we're not trying to connect only to these school kids who play sport or about their sport. It's about what can they take, or what can we give them from our journey as athletes that we learnt through sport, and get that message across to them so that they can apply it in all areas of their life. And that basic message is that athletes or Olympians are normal people, so you can be an Olympian too, and that if you can find a passion to just be the best that you can be, apply some resilience in the goal setting, which are key themes we talk about, then who knows what you can achieve.
This is a great chance to dive into your journey. What are your memories of junior sport, early days?
Yeah. I think about this a lot, and I ask my parents about it a lot. Like, what was I like when I was 13 years old and running up and down the court? Because now I work with a lot of athletes that age, and it's interesting to try to see what I was like and knowing where my journey took me in the end. But what I remember from those days is just enjoying it, and not I wouldn't say I loved basketball when I started when I was 12, and I played just quite organically up the levels. But I did always want to be an Olympian, and never thought it was going to be possible, but I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I think that was kind of guiding me without me realizing it, so that when I was just playing sport when I was young and in those junior levels, it was fun, and I was like, well, what can I achieve in this? Not ever with that, oh my gosh, I have to like work extra hard, because if I want to be an Olympian, then I've got to train every single day and all that kind of stuff. It just happened organically and naturally through wanting to see what my best was, but also enjoying it and being with friends and loving competition at the same time.
It's really fascinating with seeing elite athletes and what sports they started off with as a junior, with that sports sampling. So what were you doing? What were you immersed in? I
was playing, I think, every sport. Like through school, you just get exposed to so many different sports. But I had a lot of sport outside of school, surf club, swimming, I got into netball at the same time as basketball, so I was playing both for a while, but always active, always had to be active, could not sit down still, was always fidgeting and stuff like that. And just growing up with a family that always wanted to be active as well. And I had 2 sisters, so we were always doing things. And I look back at those times now, and I think that that's really important, that you just get out there and you try all these different things. And I'm really glad that our school system's like that, because I loved hockey, and I wouldn't have tried hockey if I hadn't gone to school and they made us do it. Well, the same as cricket or footy, and I'm terrible at footy, but I got a little touch of it, and I think that that's really cool. I love that.
How are you on a surfboard?
I can stand up for about 1 second.
That's 1 second longer than I can, so that's good.
I never devoted any amount of time to that, but it was just always something we did in the summer, like go down to the beach with Dad, and he would push us into the waves and we'd try and stand up. And then obviously with the surf club training, it was incredibly daunting when we were doing it, but now I feel really confident down the beach, and a lot of my lifestyle's around the beach. So yeah, I'm cool that I picked up those skills along the way.
That's good. Now, the basketball skills, what do you remember of first holding a basketball, shooting at those hoops?
I can't remember the first time, but I played with my friends and I got put into it because I was tall. So, there was that mum knew that I was smart enough to recognize there was an advantage there. And my coach was my school friend's mum, who is actually now my team manager and in one of the leagues I play in, which is kind of cool. And I just remember there's a photo of me I saw recently, and it would have been during that first season. And it was a team photo, and it was just after we played a game. And my face is like a beetroot. It is bright red, and I look utterly exhausted. And I was talking to my parents the other day about it, and they were like, there would be games where you would just run yourself into the ground and not collapse, but not be able to do anything after it because you went so hard. And I used to do a lot of little athletics. And I remember the first time that I ran the 800 meters. So we normally run the 400, one lap, and it's tiring, but it's okay. And it was the first time I'd ever ran the big girl race, the 800 meters. And my dad was watching, and I just remember blasting out of the blocks and sprinting. And then I just got 3/4 away through the first lap, and I was like, oh my gosh, I died. I went too hard. And so I think that sums up a lot of my early playing experiences, was just going out as hard as I could, and sometimes that not being the smartest thing, but just wanting to get out there and run and have fun.
Who are your heroes?
Definitely my parents. So a bit of a weird upbringing. I don't remember being exposed to basketball on TV. I didn't have any heroes in basketball until I got a little bit older, and I learned about Lauren Jackson and those kinds of people. But I looked up to my parents because they were always very active, and probably my dad more than my mum, just because he was an Australian sailing champion. So he understood how you had to apply yourself to get better at something, and the kind of work ethic that took. And he was always supporting. Both my parents supported me, but I just probably gravitated more towards my dad because of the messaging he was talking to me about, and he'd always give me pep talks and that kind of stuff. So always really tried to just make them proud and happy, and do what the advice that they gave me, which was always very, very humble advice. It wasn't ever pushing, or with the work that I do with a lot of athletes now, you see some parents that they want their kids to be superstars, and they push and push and think that they know a little bit more than the coaches, and my parents didn't ever feel like that to me. So it was quite nice. But noteworthy is that I did love watching the Olympics, and I do remember watching Kathy Freeman and Ian Thorpe so much growing up, and they were my idols. They were the coolest people, they were champions. So yeah, a little bit of sporting, but also probably more so my parents.
Yeah, it was amazing growing up and having the Sydney 2000 games at home, and how inspiring that is. So you can only imagine what Brisbane will be like for that generation. Yeah,
and you don't know who's watching. And I think about that a lot with the Boomers game at Tokyo. you don't know what kids were watching that and are like, oh, I want to do that. That's cool. Like that's what I love. That's inspiring.
It was amazing, those montages on Channel 7 of people watching at home and young kids watching at home, and how they were trying to emulate the high jump and the relays and things. It was hilarious, but really cool. Really nice. You then progressed through the ranks of basketball to get to the stage of getting into the college system. Mm-hmm. So what's it like as a young person to actually pack up your bags and head over to, the big smoke, the USA, to pursue your dream?
Yeah. A lot of things went into that decision. I had been invited to the WNBL Perth team, which is a pro league in Australia. They were called the West Coast Waves back then, I think. Or maybe still the Breakers, not sure. They've gone through a lot of name changes.
Almost sound like a surfing team, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And so I've been invited to try out, and I was always someone who would try out, even if I had no expectations. I've always had very low expectations of my abilities, which has hurt me a lot. But so I tried out, and I kept getting, selected into the next stages of this as a development player. And I had just previously said no to a college, to going over to college. I decided to stay home and study a year of physio. But I know that in my heart that the decision was because it was made out of fear, because I didn't want to leave, and I didn't want to. It was such a daunting thing to go and live on the other side of the world and get into that college environment, which seemed really scary. So I put that off for a year, but I was in the meantime training with this team, and it came to the point where it was starting to look like I was going to get offered a contract, and if I signed, then I wasn't ever going to be able to go to college because I would have been a professional. So I think at that moment I was like, actually, I don't want, this isn't, this. I wanted to get better before I went into the league. And I knew that the only way to do that was to go away to college. That was going to provide me with 4 years of intense basketball training, and that was going to make me better. So that was probably why I made the decision to go over there. But it was always still full of so much fear. And I remember getting on the plane, leaving, and just sitting in the airport before I got on the plane, like bawling my eyes out. I did not want to go, but I really felt like I had to, because I was chasing something more. So that has always interested me looking back, because, just because a decision we're making is full of fear, and there's that element of doubt, and it's scary because it's new and we're going to be pushed and uncomfortable. I think I learned in that moment that doesn't matter. It's not a reason to not go and try something new, or to not go and push yourself. So yes, it was hard and horrible and a really testing time for me while I was over there. But I know that if I hadn't gone, I wouldn't be the player I am today.
Yeah. Tell us the college you were at, and also what were those first few days like? I mean, you're an Australian from Perth, one of the world's most isolated cities. And were there any other Australians? Who was there to sort of be that support early on?
Yeah, so I went to West Virginia University, and they are a big school, but in a small town, so in Morgantown, West Virginia. So without the school there, it's just a tiny population, so it's a true college town. And I went there. I made the decision to go. I chose that place because they were a bit more bigger than another school I'd been offered. And I knew that because they had a Walmart. So I'd actually just Googled, okay, what place looks better? Not like whose basketball's better. It was hard to find any more information than that. I didn't go on a visit before I went. So I was like, okay, well, this place has a Walmart. So I think that they're a little bit more like up and coming, more to do. So I went there. And as soon as I got there, it was, okay, a couple of things. I think as an athlete, going to another country and having a team already there for you, that's something special, and that makes your life a lot easier. So when I hear people who quit their jobs and they leave everything they know and they're by themselves and they go to another country, I admire them, because that you've got to create your friend base, your support network from scratch. But I went over there and I went into a team. So I had automatic teammates. and people there to help me. And they do look after you over there. They have people who are organising your class schedule for you, who are driving you around to get everything you need. So they looked after me. It was just really hard because it's always going to be hard. It was a new life. And although I had those teammates, I had to make friends amongst those teammates and outside of those teammates and in my school and everything. So the first 3 months were the hardest and some of the hardest of my life up to that date. Then the 6 months in total would have been also very, very hard. It wasn't until after that, those 6 months, that I actually realised, oh, okay, I'm enjoying this now. So it was a very hard thing to start with.
You end up having 4 years in that system. Do you feel that it eventually helped you with your career to actually go through these, we say resilience, but go through those formative experiences?
Yeah, of course it helped me. And, when people ask, like, do you regret anything in life? And the cliche answer is like, no, I don't regret anything. Well, I don't regret anything because I am fully aware of how every experience I had over there helped me. Yes, a lot of those experiences were incredibly hard. And, if I had made different decisions, if I'd chosen a different place, if I had gone over more confident in my own abilities, then my experience would have been different. But I think, you can't change that. And because of those experiences I've had, it did get me better basketball-wise, skill-wise, but it did hurt me with my mindset and my mental health. So after that, I had to, work harder on those areas, and it had a long-lasting effect on my career, which is something that I've only started to be able to work through and move past over the last maybe 4 or 5 years of my career. But I'm in a spot where I'm moving away from playing and mentoring other athletes and working on people's mindsets with them. And I know that if I hadn't gone through those experiences, then I wouldn't be able to help those people with what they're going through. So fully grateful for every experience I had. But I want to be real with everyone. College is bloody hard and it's not all roses and glory. And if you go over there, you've got to be prepared for that, I think.
Yeah, society has shifted in the last decade or so around the conversation about mental health, and we saw in the recent Olympics. So 10 years ago, how did you lean into those experiences? What did that look like?
Yeah. There was minimal support. I did see a sports psych when I was over there, but just for a little bit. And if I could do it again, I would have stuck with it longer. But the support services weren't really offered. Sport still has this huge stigma around mental health, and it was definitely obvious over there where you were punished, physically, mentally, emotionally, if you showed any sign of weakness. And there would be coaches on the training court who they made it their goal for that training session to break someone, and they thought that breaking them would make them stronger. And so they think that they're molding people into strong women and strong men, but that's not the way to do it. Like that's an old school approach, and I think we're past that now. Back in that day, we were still kind of a bit stuck in it. Back in that day, 10 years ago, it's not that long, but we're still trying to fight those stigmas and break those stigmas. But yeah, so I struggled through it, and I would call home. I'd have to wait until the time was appropriate because of the time difference, and I didn't have a mobile phone for some of it, so I was on a pay phone. And the people that you're so used to having as instant access, they weren't instant, so you were alone a lot. I was isolated a lot. But the sports psych helped a lot, and then me having friends outside of basketball helped a lot. So I relied on my friendships that I made heavily, and that was how I made it through, those friends. Yeah.
Later on in your college career, you actually got selected for the Australian Olympic team and the Opals. So there was that silver lining of your time there. Tell us what it's like to actually be notified that you're going to play for Australia.
Yeah, I wasn't selected until a year out of college. So I'd come home and I was playing professionally, but I was still, pretty much in that headspace of that I had been at college. But my call up to the national team was a little bit weird, but interesting. I was on holiday with one of my friends from college was visiting, and I was on holiday in Perth, in Australia, and I got a call to join in for an Australian university team tryouts, and I couldn't because I was on holiday, so I said no. But then I got another call up for an emerging opals. So the emerging opals is the junior people who are earmarked for potentially one day making the Olympic team, but aren't quite there yet. And at the same time that camp, which I said yes to for that one, that camp was at the same time that the opals camp was running, and they were side by side. So they were quite, it was all the same, very similar. And I was on that court with the emerging opals training, and the coach would go back and forth, and he had been watching my court and he liked what he saw in one drill or maybe a day, I don't know. And then he asked me to go and demonstrate on the opals court. So then the whole entire team of the opals squad and then all the emerging opals athletes are watching this demonstration of the next drill we're doing. And this is like my moment. And I remember being out there just make the layups, just run hard, just make the layups. Like that was kind of all my thought processing was so basic in that moment, like get ball, make layup, run hard, just do whatever you can to I didn't even know if it was going to be my moment to shine or not, but it ended up being my moment to shine. And I stayed on that court for the rest of the squad. And then I found myself going on my first tour to China with the squad. And then I made every team after that and every tournament for the next 4 years leading up to Rio. So yeah, kind of crazy how it started.
That's amazing. Yeah, get ball, lay up, make shot.
Yeah. Move arms.
Yeah. That's good. And then the Rio Olympic Games came up and you're in the team. You were talking in the breakfast about how there was that competition to actually make sure you're getting in the team and the camps and what that scenario was like. So tell us about the intensity of that and that uncertainty of even making it too.
Yeah, very interesting dynamics on these team. We would have camps, and leading into Rio, probably 2 years leading into Rio, there were more camps, so they ramp it up a bit because it's the biggest competition. So we would have probably camps every 1 to 2 months. Each camp goes about 7 to 10 days, and you're in a different spot all around Australia. Sometimes these camps are tours around Europe, so you're away for 2 weeks playing and training. And that at the end of that camp, someone's going to get cut, someone's going to make it, or someone else is going to be brought into the next camp who wasn't available for that camp. So that's always in everyone's back of their mind. And every single one of our first trainings at every camp was always like back to all of us were under 12 girls at our first tryouts, all nervous and trying to remember how to dribble the ball and shoot the ball. So it was kind of like, everyone's like really nervous, which was nice to see that at least you weren't alone. But the dynamics, because we were competing against each other, but also you had to work as a team on the court, but also you lived with everyone. So I was sharing with different people each tour, but sometimes they were your competition in your direct spot on the court. And I'm a deep thinker and probably an overthinker. So I would be thinking about all these things and it was pretty awkward. And I let that affect me on the court. I think it was hard to leave everything off the court as I stepped onto the court for me in those days. But yeah, very interesting dynamics of competing, but trying to work together at the same time and trying to make this the Olympic team. The biggest thing in my life, it was the biggest vision I'd ever had. So I felt it took every ounce of me to stay mentally and emotionally composed for a while there. Yeah.
You eventually made it, which is amazing. So you overthought correctly.
Yeah.
But Rio 2016, now we look back and at the moment when we're recording, it's 5 years ago. How do you reflect on that experience, knowing it's the last Olympics, the way that we knew it, how it was, where people could mix together and you have crowds and you have the color, and Tokyo was so different. So how do you look back on it now with that hindsight of time?
I look back on it with a lot more gratitude. I think when I was in the village in Rio, we had some teammates who'd been to London, and they were comparing the two. And they were like, oh my gosh, like London was just so much better than this. Like we would be getting this and this and, all of this was beautiful and that kind of stuff. And it dampened my experience I was kind of like, oh, is this not how it's supposed to be? Like, is this not good? And then there were obvious things where it wasn't good, like the flushing of the toilet situation, the food situation. There was the getting to event situations. There were a lot of stuff that I was like, yeah, this is probably not how a normal Olympic game should go. But now getting the opportunity to look back on it and compare it to the struggles in Tokyo of not playing in front of crowds, not having your support network, the people who helped you the most, you don't go to Olympic Games by yourself. Like it takes a family, and it takes more than that, a community to help you go, and to not have them there supporting you, but also celebrating with you and being there for the lows. That would have been incredibly hard. And so I'm grateful that my experience was what it was. I had all my family there. I had that. Oh, I just realized my first coach who's now my team manager, she came.
Oh, cool.
She was like, sure, I'll go to Rio. Why not? And she was there throughout it all. And so it was beautiful. That was a big part of my experience, was when I could get out of the village and go and have dinner with my family in the streets of Rio. So yeah, I think that I look back and I feel for those Tokyo athletes, because that is a big part of the Olympic Games.
Shed some light into some of those experiences. I know you had the opportunity to walk past the hero that you mentioned earlier. What was that like, and those opportunities that you get as an athlete to be in the village? Yes,
it's the most surreal thing being in the village, getting to line up for dinner behind, NBA players and famous tennis players, and everyone's fangirling when we are there. Like all the athletes are the best athletes in the world in their sports, and yet they'll be in the dining hall, they'll see Usain Bolt and they'll want to run over to him and get his autograph and photo. And I like that, because everyone recognizes the struggles that you go through to be an athlete, but those struggles are relatable for everyone. It's not just, those struggles don't just happen on the court or on the field. So I think that's why people can connect so well to athletes and to the Olympic Games. But in that village, I did, as you mentioned, get to see Cathy Freeman, and I did meet her, and it was a good experience for me because, yes, she had been my idol. She was my inspiration from 11 years old. But I was also at the stage where in the village it was hard to escape. So I felt like I couldn't recharge. I was always constantly surrounded by people, and I was struggling emotionally and mentally with that because I never considered myself as an extrovert. I labeled myself. And I was kind of like creating a theory in my mind, like if you want to be a good athlete, you have to be an extrovert. You have to be like have that ego and be loud and dynamic to meet people and stuff like that. And I didn't feel like I fit that mold. So seeing Cathy Freeman for that first time, we were with it as a team, and we all were like, oh my gosh, Cathy Freeman, can we have a photo? And she was like, me? Like, you want a photo with me? She was so humble and so quiet and shy. And I loved that because I was in that headspace where I was like, there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't be here if I'm like this. Seeing the greatest athlete in my eyes of all time, who was potentially similar, was like, okay, Natalie, stop going down that path. Like, just be you. You don't have to be anyway. Yeah. So that was good for me for a lot of reasons.
Have you seen the Naomi Osaka Netflix documentary?
No, I've seen the ads for it. So I've got a bit of an insight. She's very introverted and very similar, but it is on my list of things to watch for sure.
Yeah, it definitely gives you an appreciation of the human behind the headlines and just those flashing lights of the cameras and the press conferences, and just the type of person she is isn't conducive to those environments.
Yeah.
But she still gets out there and performs at a high level.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Like you can be the greatest, not the greatest, so I'm not saying she's the greatest, but a fantastic tennis player and be so good at your sport. But just because you don't want to talk to media, like you can't compete, or it affects, obviously that effect of how it affects us mentally is so strong that it can affect everything else. So it's an interesting story of hers.
And it's really interesting because it's an individual sport, and the types of questions that she fields are really cutting deep into her and her game. And it does plant the seed of doubt that you just don't need sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can empathize, if she's getting ready for a massive match and the day before someone asks her a question about a part of her game that she's working on, and it can really get you.
I touched on it earlier, but in that space leading up to Rio, like it took every ounce of me to just function. When I wasn't at camp, I had to recover and get ready to go again. I felt like a shell because I was just during those camps so much. I felt all that intense rivalry, but all those tensions, and I was so focused on making this big goal that you're so open to any persuasion. So I can only imagine having that much media attention and having someone asking me and planting that seed of doubt that it's like a fertile ground right there, because you already have your own doubts. You don't need other people to plant them again for you or make them grow. We're so good at, unfortunately, having our own doubts and growing them ourselves that it's just tough. It's a battlefield. Our minds are a battlefield at times.
When you're in Olympic Village where there's so much stimulus in terms of all these things going on, how did you have coping mechanisms? What did you develop that helped you through that?
Yeah, I got really good at putting my noise-cancelling headphones on. I knew that I needed alone time. I've known that that's just who I am. So I tried to utilize that, blocking out all my senses as much as I could when we had downtime. And I also I love to journal. So I would write a lot during those times of just what was going through my head, what I was struggling with. That was probably really helpful for me. And I also reached out to my friends and my family again, that they always support me and offer their support in those times.
To get really specific on the journaling, is it a ritual that is done at the same time every day, or when you just feel you need to? How do you sort of do it?
It is now, but back then it was just when I felt like I needed to, and I tried to do it every day. Sometimes I would miss days because sometimes there were things that I didn't want to confront, which I think is a big barrier for a lot of people to journaling. It can be quite confronting. But nowadays I do have a routine every morning. I have a little routine and I journal every morning. And if I don't get it done in the morning for whatever reason, I do get it done every day. That's my goal. And there are times when I do miss it, which is not the goal, but that happens. That's life. So, I've definitely seen the advantages and how much it helps me, so much so that I make sure it is a routine for me. It's in there every day.
While we're on Rio as well, something I just wanted to talk to you about that seems really interesting comparing Rio to Tokyo was how Australia didn't have a medal target for 2021 Tokyo. And it seemed like this Olympic Games has been really successful and everyone is really energized by the Olympic team and Paralympics on right now, because we almost didn't have any expectations. We didn't formally say we're going to win so-and-so gold medals. Whereas with Rio, that was the last Olympics where we did have, a publicly stated tally, and there just must have been that pressure. But I wonder how it permeated to yourselves and your team.
I didn't know that about the medal tallies, but having heard it just then, it makes sense of my experience of Rio, because we didn't win a medal like every other Opals team had done before us. And I felt that expectation going into it. I didn't feel that expectation was too much. Like it felt, we had a great team. Yeah, we were strong. We should have won a medal. But after it, I guess I felt that expectation that we didn't meet. So that did permeate to us, because it came from, the legacy of the Opals of being so successful, and we felt like we'd let them, and I'm speaking for others, but I guess I can only speak for myself. I felt like I'd let down all those other Opals and teams before us, and that legacy that they had created. I let myself down because it was a goal of mine to win a medal. And I let my team down because that was also our team goal, was to win a medal. And I let Australia down. That was probably the biggest. It's amazing playing for your country, and it's something special. It truly is. But when you don't feel that you meet their expectations, it can be devastating. And that we don't, that's not nice. That's a whole nother level of, unmet expectations we're putting on ourselves, and failure, essentially. Felt like we'd failed. I felt like I'd failed the country. So pretty massive to be feeling like that. So it was dark. Yeah.
I know you don't think this now, but don't ever think that, because you are one of 3,000 odd Olympians that have ever been able to represent our country in the greatest sporting event in the world. So never, ever feel like that.
Yeah, it took a while for me to not feel like that. But I do, you're right. I don't feel that now, but thank you. I really appreciate that.
No worries. I do want to zoom in on what it's like after an Olympics, because you've played in front of crowds and you get that sort of that high, that adrenaline, that rush, and then all of a sudden you go home and it's quiet and there's this come down. What's it like for a massive event like the Olympics? Those, the anticipation, and then all of a sudden you go from 100 to 0.
There's a lot of athletes talking about it at the moment, which I think is very good, because the mental health struggles after such a big tournament like that, they're hard. And I feel for those athletes who had to go into quarantine to be alone for 2 weeks. So following that, that massive high, and then it's just suddenly poof, gone, and you're like, oh, like, what am I now? I devoted every part of me to making this team, and I made it. And then I devoted every part of me to winning a medal, and then we didn't. And so what am I left with now? And I think that's where athletes stumble, because everything goes into that performance. We don't ask ourselves what's next. Or if I win that medal, who does Natalie look like after that? If I lose it, who does she look like? Who is she? So a bit of an identity crisis goes on for a lot of athletes. I felt also, though, a lot of relief, because of that environment was very stressful for me. So there was also a bit of relief that went along with it after that it was all over, and I'd broken free of it. But probably, the biggest thing was like, what do I do now? Like, I did play again. I probably shouldn't have gone straight into a season as quickly as I had. I only had 10 days off. I should have had a lot more than that. And my coach knew it, but we didn't do anything about it. So that's another lesson I learned, that it heavily affected my whole performance that year. But, it needs more athletes talking about it. It needs more actual steps taken post-event.
Because it's almost like athletes are thought of as robots, whereas you're human beings that need rest. And, for players to be at the top level, you almost need to reduce the quantity and increase the quality of matches. And we see it in soccer, for instance, where these players are playing every 3 days, for a matter of months, and it's injuries. So
builds up.
When you were in Rio and you finally finished, did you get to enjoy the beautiful city? And I'm asking because this show is inspired by the experiences that I had personally at Rio 2016, and that type of thing. Is a beautiful place. So I was wondering if you did get to break the shackles of the village.
Yeah, I did. So because we finished earlier, hey, look at the bright side. We got more time in Rio and we could stay in the village. And I left every day for the whole day, and I hung out with my family. And they'd already done a lot of Rio because they'd been there for the tournament. But we did, I didn't go up to Christ the Redeemer because I'd already done that when we'd done an Opals tour there earlier in the year. But that was amazing, and I absolutely love that. And yeah, we got to see a lot of the sites, but I was just a little bit annoyed. I didn't get to see any other events. I got to see the boomers play, but I wish, because that's such a big part of the Olympics, is all those other events that you can go and watch and support. So that's a bit of a regret that I have of not going to any of the other events. Just it was hard to get around.
Okay. Was it also a ticketing issue? Like they all sold out, or
we were probably able to get tickets, but it was like takes 2 hours to get to this event, and they were really discouraging us to leave the village, especially by ourselves. So it just logistically it wasn't the easiest, and I probably didn't feel like in that stage to be around other sport. I think I wanted to break away and just be with my family and see beautiful Rio and immerse myself in that a little bit more, because it did feel like we were just like transplanted into this, which is literally what we were, into this village, and we didn't get to experience it. I still don't think I experienced it, so probably have to go back there and go with someone who can be my tour guide and show me around and do it right.
Yep. Yeah, there's plenty of tour guides Rio de Janeiro has contacts with there, so I can sort you out, Natalie. That's cool. Wanted to, talking about traveling, you've played in Germany, you played in France, you've won championships there. I'm really fascinated by, you've now played not football, you played basketball at a professional or really high level in 3 different continents. So how did you find the European experience and that culture around basketball?
Europe for me was some of the best times of my career. It's where I learnt to play because I loved basketball. I actually found out what I love about basketball in Europe, and that was 5 years ago. So I played a lot of basketball before then without really ever loving it and understanding what exactly I loved about it. But that was forced upon me to figure that out, because going to Europe, you go to a country where they don't speak English. So Germany was the first one I went to, and my area, their English, that they knew how to, but they wouldn't. Quite often, like the people in the shops wouldn't speak English to help you out, so it was quite isolating in that. And my coach, English was his 3rd language, so that was pretty broken. Luckily, all my teammates spoke English, and we had a fantastic bond. And I came late, halfway through the season, for my first experience over there. So I went into a team who'd already been playing together for 4 months. So, but luckily the team was really nice, and we all bonded quite quickly. So that's what gets you through when you're playing in Europe, is the team around you. And it's hit or miss. You don't really know what you're getting into before you go over there. But my experiences have always been really good, so that I've got to go. I think of my times in Europe as traveling and immersing myself in the cultures and living in these foreign countries with a lot of basketball on the side. But definitely I realized that I was there for more than just basketball.
What's the genesis of a move to a European club? So are there scouts who are looking at Australian competitions, or do you seek out to them? Just really interested in how the mechanics of it. I have an agent, and so it's always something that you talk about with your agent, like, should I go play in Europe? It's an option. I always wanted to, because I wanted to go and experience something new. And so, your agent gets in contact with clubs over there, and being on the Australian team for 4 years and going to Olympic Games, you get interest. So that's how people see you, and also going to college, you get interest there. And also my mum's British, so I have a British passport. So that also now makes me more attractive over there, because I won't take up a restricted spot. I'm a local. So that's kind of how all that happens. And I don't actually give phone calls to the clubs and I say, hey, do you want me to play for you? It's all done through my agent, which makes my life a lot easier. Yeah. Okay. I'm kind of thinking of Anchorman. I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal. So that's how they find you. Okay. Easy. I did not say that. So, I mean, that's really exciting. And to actually win a championship in the German top flight, like, how do you compare that to your other achievements, and what's that level like compared to those other places you played? The German level is pretty strong. So it's not the top. There's a couple of countries that are the top in Europe that are renowned as the top, but the German level is pretty good. Like, it's in the middle. It's quite strong. And
So that to win a championship in that level is amazing. And it was the first one. The club had never won one before. We went undefeated by one game for the whole season. So it was like a special season for us. And that's just so rare. And now as I come towards the end of my career, I look back at the championships I've won and, you know, I think it's maybe 7. Like, so it's not many. When you play for 20 years, you don't actually get to win that many championships. And so it makes me makes me realize, hey, every single one is important. And it's special that I got one over in Europe. That's kind of unheard of for an Australian. So, yeah, I'm very, very proud of that one.
And coming back to Perth now, it must be amazing. And tell us about this work you do with athlete mentoring. Is it mainly with basketballers? Who are you working with predominantly?
Yes, the business is called Enriched Athletes, so it's not just basketball players, but obviously I am a basketball player, and I already do some coaching outside of with individual coaching. So it's just natural that I've got mostly basketball players, but I do work with a couple of netball players, done some swimming before. So it's not restricted to just basketball, and it's an area it should be for everyone. It is for everyone. So I want to branch out with that too. But it's all just come from my own lived experiences and those struggles that I've touched on today and what I learned from them, and with the passion to help other people realize that you can learn so much from sport, because it's just what you struggle with in sport, you're going to struggle with outside of sport, but it just comes up maybe a little bit more, you know, in front of you in sport, because you're a bit more exposed and your performance is judged. So all those fears and those doubts, they're right at the forefront. So that is essentially forms what I talk to the kids about and the clients about. The ages range. I see you're saying kids, but it's not just kids. It goes up to professional athletes as well. So, yeah.
There's a number of tools in the toolkit. Like you mentioned journaling, mindfulness, looking at mindset. There's quite a few things you can do. So how do you choose or select what's best to prescribe to an athlete?
It is all very tailored towards what the athlete is struggling with, and they have to want to do these two tools. So there are, you know, I have set it up so that I don't think the clients really realize what I'm doing. I always set like in-game goals with them. So just like 3 things that they want to achieve from every game. But yes, it's that means that they may get 10 assists or 20 rebounds. That's fantastic. That's their performance. That's what we want. But it's a tool as well to move away from distractions, external distractions and internal distractions being probably the biggest, and instead focus on the moment. So what am I doing right now? What can I do? Oh, I'm going to go get a rebound, instead of listening to my parent yell on the sideline, or instead of listening to that anger in me that really wants me to rage at the refs and yell at them. What can I do instead? And that's what those goals do for them. So that forms the basics. It's all about, you know, how do we move away from the distractions and instead focus on what we can do in every moment. But then obviously if someone says to me, I hate meditation, I can't sit still, I'm not going to tell them to go and meditate every day. I'm not going to say, if you don't meditate, then you will not be a good player or a good person. So it's like, okay, can we like do it once a week? Can we journal instead? Are there other things we can do? So I make sure that it is very tailored towards each client.
Really interested in bringing the coaches and the parents on the journey too. We touched upon it briefly. The importance of coaches knowing about and putting athletes at the center of their programs, and also that parenting, that mindful sport parenting. You know, off the court, you hear about so many players who leave the sport because of that drive home. Yeah. So, how are you trying to bring them on the journey as well?
Yeah, it's when we're looking at athlete wellbeing, I don't understand why it's not at the forefront of every single decision that's made in the higher levels in a sporting organisation. Otherwise, why are you running a sports organisation if you're not going to look after the kids playing the sport? are you there to make money? Well, unfortunately, a lot of clubs are to make money. But even still, if that's your driving motivation, well, don't you want better performance to have better athletes to get a bit more money? Well, then you should still be giving what the athletes need in order to perform better. And athletes need their mental health to be looked after. Their psychological well-being needs have to be met, and they have not been. And that's why we're only just like tipping the iceberg of the struggles that professional athletes have. They're professional athletes. They come from, I believe, our junior clubs, junior sporting experiences. We all know that kids learn faster, and the things that they learn are going to impact the rest of their lives. So that's why I'm drawn towards working with clients in the age group of 11 actually to 18, because that's when a lot of our fundamental, beliefs are going to be put into place. Sorry, I've gone a bit off tangent with that one, but it's understanding on top of that then the people who are influencing kids in those ages the most, and that is coaches and parents. And I don't think, unfortunately, with junior sporting organisations, they rely on a lot of volunteers and a lot of mums and dads helping out. That's how they're built. That's how it works. But that doesn't mean that those mums and dads are equipped at or dealing with athletes or children. They might not know how to do those things. So when we're putting them in a position where they have such a big influence, we want to make sure that influence is as helpful and holistic for that athlete as possible. Hence the talking to coaches about their role as a coach and the actions that support and the actions that thwart and hinder your athlete's well-being. Same with the parents. How, as you as a parent, can you understand that you're there to support, you're not there to coach? And I think that line's crossed every single day, and probably with almost every parent-child relationship. Educating. It's just educating and encouraging people and seeing the impact that they can have, and let's make sure it's a good and a positive impact.
When we think about young girls' participation in sport, can you speak to the importance of confidence?
Confidence is it's the easiest way to, obviously, it explains that self-belief. But I think it's thrown around a little bit too much, and it felt like for me, and I hear a lot of my clients saying it as well, that it's like there's something wrong with me because I'm not confident enough. And I've got all this potential. If I could just get that confidence, then I'm going to be perfect. Then I'm going to be whole. And I just don't believe in that. I don't think confidence is necessarily the key, but young females struggle with it more than males. And it is that I think it comes from more than sport. It comes in our culture of, if you look at a female athlete compared to a male athlete in general, I'm very generalizing right now, then the male athlete is less afraid to say how confident they feel or how good they think they are than a female, because a female's worrying about all the judgments that her friends and her teammates that she's going to get from them. And she's worried when she steps onto the court about what other people think about her more so than the males. And so when you're now in a sporting environment and everyone's judging your performance, because that's literally what a game is how well you perform out there for exposure. If you make a mistake on the court, then all these people see it and all these people are like, oh, this is what you think. Oh, she's not a very good basketball player. But if you make a mistake and you're an accountant, well, you just press backspace and you press delete and no one knows. So, as an athlete, there's that level of exposure, and I think that then ties into all those other ways that we bring females up compared to males and how that influences them on the court.
Natalie, very mindful of your time, but before we go, I want to talk about Olympics Unleashed, and that's the reason we're speaking today. Without it, we wouldn't have met, but you're now able to go into schools across WA. It's a fantastic program. You talked about it at the top, but bringing all these pieces together as an ex-Olympian, you're now able to share your story and inspire that next generation. Just tell us about that and how much it means to you.
It is really, I feel like I've come full circle because for a lot of my career, I was trying to find out what there was more than just sport, more than just basketball. It always felt like an incredibly selfish thing to go out there and get my body to its best, to its highest potential, so that I could perform as well as I could. It felt really selfish, and it wasn't enough for me. Like I was always trying to find that deeper, that purpose, that why. Why am I doing this? I needed that, and it took me a while to find that. But now I can see that sport, it brings so many people together, and you don't have to play a particular sport in order to go on an emotional journey with the athletes, with the game. And I think that that's beautiful, because now if you're watching the Boomers win their bronze medal and you've never watched a game of basketball in your life and you're a young 12-year-old kid, maybe you're going to go and play now. And maybe that's going to lead you to playing a different sport, or maybe that's going to lead you to instead a different passion. It's got nothing to do with sport. And so that's why I think sport can bring people together, and it can, be a catalyst for a lot of change. It can also be a way to learn incredible life lessons in a relatively safe environment. So although I just said before, like if you make a mistake, everyone's watching, and that's kind of scary, it's also like, okay, you made a mistake. It's a game. You can, it's not real life, in that your mistakes in your real life can be a lot more, have a larger effect. So if you can learn them in sport, that's pretty cool. And then you can apply it to the rest of your life. And that is what Olympics Unleashed is doing. That's what it's allowing me to do. And that's why I love it. And I will always be open to any chat about sport, about the lessons that I've learned through sport, not to make me feel really good about talking about myself, but just to open myself up and be honest with my journey and story and struggles, with the hopes that someone else can connect with it and take away something, and then they go out and they learn it for themselves. So they are inspired to do something else. And that's, I love that. It's important to me.
Thank you, and all power to you for the work you're doing, inspiring the next generation and future. Thank you very much for joining me on Rio de Janeiro, Natalie Burton.
No worries. Thank you so much. It was awesome to have a good chat.
And there we have it, a really enlightening chat with Natalie Burton. Some good news to share as well is that she's going to be embarking on a coaching career very shortly as well. Thank you for listening. Keep smiling, keep scoring.